right, so this is our inaugural podcast.
Hello.
And the first time we're using Discord to do this too. This is really, really cool.
Yeah, who cares about Zoom, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure that we can use this to teach though, because I don't think, is it robust enough? Do you guys have enough experience with Discord to know whether it's robust enough?
I think people have more experience with Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Even like the students. So I think it's better to just keep it open.
Yeah. Anyway, so you guys saw all the questions that came in by Pollev, right? How many were there altogether?
A lot.
Is there an actual count? Come on. How many of them?
257.
257. I think you counted the header, so 256.
Yeah.
That makes a difference, yes.
Well, there's some that are personal, so I'm not sure that we'll answer those. Maybe one of these days when we are feeling, more at ease. And then there's a whole bunch that is just people exclaiming, so there's nothing to answer for them. And then there's a whole bunch that I already answered on the blog already. So if you're listening to this, please go and check out the blog. I really spent so much time typing how many parts of those already. But there's apparently still a lot left, apparently. Jereld, there's still a whole bunch left, right? Yong Teck.
Yeah, so most of what's left will be pertaining to like morality and like moral responsibility. So I guess we can go through that now.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. But probably we can't talk about all of them. Were there any that we should just reserve because they're going to come up later anyway?
I think mostly stuff about, just like free will and moral responsibility. And I guess stuff about like, okay, what makes something right and what makes something wrong, that'll be in the right and wrong lecture like next week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So probably we can pull off on those first. Okay, so then what's the big one that comes up? I did notice it, and I think that some of the students who stayed back to talk to us actually kind of asked us a similar set of questions, isn't it? Right. A lot of Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like the very big question. I think it's a very popular question, especially for like, high school or university students. Like, is morality objective or subjective? Are we all just like talking about our beliefs and feelings, or is there like something more substantial to it? Is the big question. Yes.
I'm actually curious. Did you guys actually have a similar questions when you were at the age?
Yeah, definitely. Like I remember like I was on this orientation trip, right? And like it was like 2-3 a.m. and we were like a little bit tipsy, and then we weren't talking about like relationships or anything. We were just talking about or anything like that traditional like youngsters talk about, right? But we were talking about like, is morality like objective or subjective? Like half drunk. And that was one of the more memorable parts of my orientation.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Yong Teck is keeping his cool.
Okay, so to share a bit, right, I was actually thinking quite a lot about the philosophy of nudity. When I was wondering, why at the swimming pool, we can be somewhat nude, and why can't we do that, elsewhere? And that was kind of straddling the distinction between objective and subjective morality. Is there anything more than social convention, in how we dress?
Yeah. No, but the impression I always had, at least as a philo prof, and I had the same questions as you guys, so don't get me wrong, when I was a student too. But something that occurred to me when I really began to think hard about this and sort of to do this more professionally, right, is that I realized that I think a lot of young people and students are conflating several different kinds of claims when they throw out the idea. But isn't morality subjective? They use that word subjective, but most people actually aren't very sort of fine grained or very precise about what they mean by subjective. There are so many different things that are called subjective. And I think that many people actually, if you explain this to them, they might end up picking one of the other items that we don't professionally call subjective, but is close by, sort of next door neighbors, right? I mean, let me give you one example, right? I think that in many cases, people are not so much saying that morality is subjective as that they seem to doubt that we have good knowledge about it, which is not the same, right? Skepticism is not the same as subjectivity, right? So you may say that, Why is it that the people around me seem to be so confident, epistemically confident that morality demands us to do X and Y? I don't feel as if they know. But that's not the same as saying that it's subjective. But that's already one thing really. So the plea there is something like epistemic modesty. Right. Here's another one. People take note of the fact that we have moral disagreements. Right. Many of us, disagree. But as I'm going to point out in the coming lecture that in order for there to be a genuine disagreement, it can't be that morality is subjective. At least not in the way we think about it when we disagree. Because if it's really subjective, then there's nothing left to disagree. It's like, it's a bit like saying, I love tea, and then you say that I love coffee, and I say, okay, good for you.
Yeah, like it's one of the objections against moral subjectivity, right? It's disagreement.
Yeah, it's not a clear-cut objection as much as it's a bit like throwing the ball back in the opponent's court, right? Say, do you really believe that you don't disagree with people morally speaking, right? But if you do disagree with people morally speaking, if you think that it's not just that you're registering yourself as having a different thing, right, different reaction, but that you disagree, then you are implying or you're presupposing that morality is objective, right? That there is a truth to the matter that isn't just how you feel or how the other guy feels or how anyone feels, but there's kind of in some weird way independent of how we feel, and then we are there to find out, and one of us can be wrong, maybe all of us can be wrong, right? Yeah, and that's already, that presupposes quite a lot actually, disagreement. Yeah. Yeah. And there are other things that we also confuse with subjectivity. Change. People like to talk about changing moral standards. Yeah, but unless all change is just change and not improvement or deprovements, if you think of it as improvements and deprovements, if you say that, oh no, people are getting worse, they used to do so much better, or you say that no, people are getting better because once upon a time we used to oppress the minorities and enslave people, and those are terrible things they did, right? Then you have to assume some degree of objectivity, that there is truth to the matter as to whether slavery is right or wrong. I don't know, what do you guys think about this? I mean, yeah. Any thoughts coming from you guys?
I don't know.
Your audio is a bit yeah.
There's still more claims that we all agree upon. But I guess we're tempted to think that the ones that we don't agree upon, like, they are objective and they're like, they won't change.
Yeah. But
Wait, so,
yeah, go ahead first, yeah.
oh no, like I didn't really hear Jereld, but like I was wondering whether like what you mean is that morality is like in some sense like the objectivity and subjectivity can be thought of as in some sense domain specific, like different domains. Some types of moral claims can be more objective than other types. Like is that the kind of view that you're trying to explain?
It could be one possible explanation, of that.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the problem with quantification, right? So if someone says that people are, or you want to say something like, I don't know, NUS students are kiasu. It's like, wait, do you mean like there's a particular guy who is really kiasu, or do you mean like every single NUS student is kiasu? What do you mean by that? You mean something like some or most or whatever, right? So there's a quantification problem, right? So it could jolly well be the case that many moral claims that people make are actually kind of, there's no truth to the matter one. That is totally possible actually. But that doesn't show that morality is subjective. It just shows that there are a lot of people who are talking nonsense or something like that. Right? That there really still may be the case that even if it's true that many moral claims are ultimately subjective, there may still be important, some moral claims that are in fact not subjective at all, but entirely objective, right? So there's a whole bunch of different things that are kind of circling around that I worry that students, well, it's not a big worry, they're fine, they'll be fine, they'll pick up the vocabulary, they'll if they think hard about it, they'll realize that there are different things involved here, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do in our module, right, force people to not squish together things that really shouldn't be squished together too quickly.
And Prof, I just like wanted to think about like a worry that I think is I suspect might be deeper, might be like implicit in these questions. And it might go something like, if so subjectivity is that like morality depends on social conventions, depends on what we say about morality
Yes.
and stuff like that. And then so the question is like, if morality is objective and say we don't believe in God, right? So then what does morality depend on? So like there's so I guess that I suspect is like maybe something motivating the questions that these kind of questions that students ask.
Yeah, that's right. That is a good one, right? So, so there are issues about epistemology, right? How do we know, right? There are issues about foundations. What makes it the case that these are the, the true moral claims, right? And there's the issue of the interference with, sort of social conventions. I made this point to the students who stayed back after the lecture, actually, that if you think about any functioning society, right, it should be the case that people actually do have a kind of social convention, and they don't have to sort of like constantly be thinking of, am I doing the right thing? It's actually part of what it means to live in a well-functioning society, that most of these questions are kind of like, please, it's already settled. Just do the normal and you'll be fine, isn't it, right? It's in fact usually in the times of crisis, or when there's enough change, where there's kind of moments of a decline, for possibly sometimes, where people worry and then they ask harder questions. So that does make it very troublesome, because most of us want to live in functioning societies, which also means that we are in fact in the very societies where we also would wonder whether or not the claims that we hold to, the moral claims we hold to, are just kind of whatever people say, or are they really true? Which is kind of ironic when you think about it. Right. Yeah. And besides, no matter how much you care about objective morality, I don't think you care about it just because it's objective morality, but you also care about it because you want to believe in it and you want people around you to believe in it, right? So ironically, you, even from the point of view of someone who cares about objective morality, there's a lot of interest to make sure that objective morality becomes a social convention, isn't it? And that does complicate things for everyone involved. Yeah. But to go back to Rui Zhe's question, so how, Yong Teck, Jereld, how do we know whether particular moral claims are objective or true or can be known?
The moral philosophy class by Dr. Mills.
Yeah, but actually I have a not so nice answer, in a sense that it sometimes doesn't put philosophy in a good light. I really wonder whether doing philosophy will teach you this. In the sense where it counts, right? Right. If the point is not just to sort of know what morality demands here, but to actually be people who are living according to the good and the moral.
Yeah, Prof, is it possible that someone who needs, all these heavy-handed philosophical reasoning and exposition to be convinced that something is morally true, to be moral, right? Someone like that is already somewhat morally deficient.
Yeah, it's a very tricky thing, isn't it? Right. So this is there's an old-fashioned worry about this one thought too many. You know about this, right? One thought too many, right? So it's like your girlfriend is in the hospital. You show up with the flowers, and she say, "Thank you, dear," and then you say, "Oh no, this is my duty. I've been reading a lot of Kant. Oh no, this conduces to the greatest advantage or the greatest number, the happiness." Are you crazy, right? That's not how we think, right? That's a facetious example, of course, right? The point is that typically what we mean by someone who is actually moral is someone who's going to behave without having to always think that much. Actually, he's going to do the right thing. I don't. This may not be something that every philosopher agrees with. In case you're wondering, but I am one of those who do worry that maybe we overemphasize the thinking when it comes to where it matters, so to speak. Yeah. You guys have any thoughts about that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I personally think that there's really a gap between thinking and doing. And I personally like I think a lot about how to like what matters to doing, right? Like how to like change the gap. And perhaps like when we talk about philosophy, we talk about truth, but I also always think about like what are some like useful ways to think about truth, right? Like truth. Like we all have like an idea of what is truth. But ever since I read like Nietzsche and Nietzsche really brought the value of truth into question, right? I've been thinking about these questions in another way. Like I just have a lot more thinking of like how are we to like so we want to search for truth, right? But we should ask the questions in a way that where when we answer it, the answer will be useful to changing our actions. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so I guess under my thinking, I'm not being super clear and specific about this, but under my thinking, I guess like the different I guess we should ask questions that are more useful. That the answers will be more useful to us, or that will guide action better. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm kind of a yes and no guy when it comes to this. I actually think that some useless thinking is in fact good for us. So I'm not Nietzschean in this sense. I actually think that sometimes, it's better not to worry too much about usefulness because we're trying to sharpen our minds, right? We're trying to learn things. We're trying to sort of be better at what we do. And even if the ultimate aim is to be a better person, a better actor, better conduct, there's a part of it that may well be just about making sure that we are intellectually on top of things, right? And we try too hard to make everything line up, it may not work. But having said that, you're right? If the point of moral philosophy is to guide action, then at some level, surely an important part of it has to accumulate in moral knowledge that actually matters, that moves people, right? Right. But of course, then the real worry comes up, which is that does moral knowledge actually move people? You know that Socrates actually make a big fuss about this, right? He would insist that if you're not moved to action, then obviously you didn't know, right? He would insist that knowledge is the component here. So the worry has always been whether or not he's right or whether he's just using knowledge in a completely different way, that he packs too much into the idea of knowledge. Yeah, but back to our own class, right? Our own module, right? I know from the past experience that they actually are students who stop eating factory farm meat after taking this class.
That's me.
There actually are students like that, right? Though there are many others who didn't change their mind or so. Yeah, and I've always understood the point of the class not as much as in changing people's mind and behavior per se, as in hopefully helping people to be a little bit more thoughtful about their own actions when they have a chance, right? To go back to my theme about how if you're living in a well-functioning society, it's actually not very likely that you have to sort of do this critical self-reflection all the time. The fact that you have to do it suggests that you are facing a midlife crisis, existential crisis, or that the world is falling apart around you, which is actually, thanks to COVID-19, we actually are in a little bit of that. So it's totally legit to be having existential crisis just for that reason alone, right? Yeah, but part of what it means to live in a well-functioning society is that this doesn't happen all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with Prof, your point on reflection. Yeah, I think there is a real case to be made about like reflexivity, like the propensity to reflect being a moral trait in itself. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So the willingness to at least sometimes when the occasion calls for it, when you're not busy about your life, right, to step back and say that, hold on a second, what are the reasons for me to believe this? What are the reasons for me to do this, right? And I think it's perfectly okay to come out of the encounter saying that, yeah, I'm still doing the thing that I'm doing. But I hope that you have at least put some thought into it now. You consider the objections, you consider the worries, and you may not completely change your mind immediately, but you have started the process of, trying to adjust your conduct to reason. It may take a while. I'm not an impatient person. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm not sure that we actually answered the student's question, but I want to, if we circle back to the thing I want to point out is, I don't really believe that most people, including students, if they thought through about it, if they know the terminology, my suspicion is that most of them will realize that they don't actually believe that morality is subjective. Right? People do get angry. You do observe injustice around you and think of it as injustice. You do get morally indignant. You do really believe that slavery is wrong. Right? You do really believe that it is not the done thing to be nasty to those who are in the minority or those who are, kind of disadvantaged and all that. So why is it that the same people may well also be very ready to, when at a more abstract level of thinking, say that, no, but surely morality is subjective. So that gap is the interesting gap, right? So my challenge to everyone is always, you just think to yourself, the last time you were angry because you thought that someone wronged you, someone did something not so nice to you, right? If you really did believe that morality is subjective, then what you are basically saying is that that reaction was irrational. It's just a reaction. There's no basis to it. There's no objective basis to it. But on the other hand, if you did think to yourself that that was not nice of you, that was wrong of you to do it to me, then you are invoking an objective conception of morality. You are saying that there's a truth to the matter of whether or not what you did was wrong to me. That isn't just me reacting, right? It's not just me having certain feelings. You are wrong. You did. That was a terrible thing you did to me, right?
Yeah, Prof. So maybe to help the class out a little bit, right? So can we maybe conclude this by trying to carve out this distinction between what is objective and what is subjective? So maybe on one reading, right, what is subjective could be all that we have access to, when we introspect. So maybe I, Jereld, Prof, and Rui Zhe, we just happen to, believe the same things, right? And it's just a matter of coincidence. So ultimately, what we believe in, what we agree on, morally speaking, is still a product of our subjective attitudes.
Yeah.
But then, is that what is objective, or actually that is not what is objective? And what is objective is something independent of all our all our moral attitudes. So.
Oh, but that's very tricky, because I do believe that there are some forms of objectivity that is interestingly related to the way, to our attitude, so to speak, right? I don't want to throw too many words around, but constructivism will definitely go in that direction. But let's not worry about that. The way I would think about it is something like this: if it's an objective moral claim, I said this just now, right? So there must be a truth to the matter that is not just how you happen to think, how you happen to think, and how you happen to think. The happen to is important, okay? Because I could imagine conceptions of objectivity that requires us to do some extra work to how you happen to think, how you happen to think, such that something extra comes out. Right? That's how the constructivists would think about it. But let's leave them aside, because that's too complicated. The basic idea is that it's not just a matter of how I happen to think about it. Right? I could be wrong. Right? If it's really just a matter of how I happen to think about it, then there is a minimal sense in which it's actually impossible for me to be wrong at the moment when I believe it. Right? So it's a bit like, when people say that taste is subjective, if I did taste it and it really did appeal to me, there's nothing you can do to change my mind. Or maybe you can brainwash me, but it doesn't change the fact that at the moment when I tasted it, it really did appeal to me, right? It really is just that, I happen to like it, and that's the end of the story. There's no further right or wrong to the matter. This is still very rough and ready. I don't think this is precise enough. I want to be clear about this first, okay? But I do think that it allows us to narrow down the thing a little bit. So if it's subjective, it's not just a matter of how you happen to think and how you happen to feel and how you happen to think and so on. Something extra. What the extra is, of course, there are many ways to try to flesh it out, right? So one way to do it is to say that, well, it's extra because there are moral facts out there, right? Or there's God out there. That's another way to do it. So there's a very, very robust way for it to be extra. but there are also more intermediate ways for you to be extra, you know. No, it's based upon facts about what we are as human beings, because we have a certain nature, we have a certain DNA structure, we have a certain set of, you know, mental modules or whatever, evolution, whatever, you know. So somewhere around here, there's a whole range of possibilities for you to construct some kind of objectivity. But the important thing is not just how you happen to think about it, how you happen to feel about it, how you happen to feel about it. Right. Yeah. So there's an interesting kind of a disjoint there, by the way, because this way of thinking about objectivity does not entail that all objective claims are also universal. Isn't it?
Yeah, Paul, I was actually thinking about like
Yeah.
the comment you made about like universality. Like I haven't really come across it, like I don't really understand it that well yet. So like I guess if it will help everyone, you could like explain what's the difference between like universal and objective.
Yeah, your audio is really needs to work on it. Okay, so the question is, how do these things relate to each other, right? Here's a very simple-minded claim, a very simple-minded example, right? The weather is not universal, right? The weather is not the same everywhere. But facts about the weather is objective. Right? Whether it's raining or not is not how, you know, it's not like, you know, Yong Teck is walking on the street, then he just says to himself, I feel like it's raining. Sorry, ho. It's not up to your say-so one. If it's raining, end of story, you know. Right? And there's an extra that is not about how you may be a receptor. You may be an epistemic agent there who is capable of perceiving the rain. Right? But it's not your perceiving that makes it the case that it's raining, right? It's raining. It's just raining. Right? And yet, this is also a fact that it's not universal. It's not raining all the time and everywhere. So there you have it. I'm not saying that morality is exactly like this. I'm just saying that objectivity and universality may not be the same thing. Right? It's not up to you whether it's raining, but it doesn't follow that facts about the weather are the same everywhere throughout all time. Can change one. Nothing wrong with that. Can change and can be in different patches in different part of the world, for all I care. This is very interesting, which means what, you know? It means that even if you think that there could be a plurality of moral rules for different places and times, it may well be the case that each of those sets of rules are objective. You realize that? Now that's going to introduce a complication that I don't think I want to worry too much about in the class though. Yeah. But actually, in a sense, the class, for the purpose of the class, I'm not worried about whether, you know, the claims that we are thinking about, say in the next 2 or 3 lectures, are they universal? I'm actually not worried about it. I'm only assuming that they are meant to be objective. Right? So suppose you want to make a case for me that 1,000 years from now, human beings are very different, chickens are very different, it's totally okay for them to eat factory farm animals. I'll say, yeah, good for you, right? You know, right now, here, is it okay for us to eat factory farm animals? We still haven't solved that, right? And there could be an objective issue about whether, you know, which answer is right or wrong, you know. So whether or not it applies everywhere, you know, may not be an issue. Yeah.